Most people never imagine this could happen, but the truth is that U.S. citizenship isn't as permanent as many think. Once you're a citizen, you get the passport, the right to vote, and the ability to live and work here freely. It feels final. It feels untouchable. But in reality, there are situations where someone can lose it, and some of the reasons might surprise you. Today we're breaking down how this happens, why it happens, and what every American, especially naturalized citizens, should understand. The first thing to know is that not all citizens are treated the same under the law. There are people who were born in the United States or born to American parents, and then there are naturalized citizens who gain citizenship through the immigration process. Both groups get the same rights, but the way their citizenship is protected is different. Someone born in the U.S. is extremely secure under the Constitution. Outside of very rare fraud cases involving false birth documents, their citizenship can't be taken away. For naturalized citizens, the government does have legal pathways to reverse that status if certain conditions are met. The most straightforward way someone loses citizenship is when they willingly give it up. Thousands of people actually do this every year. To renounce it, you have to go to a U.S. embassy or consulate outside the country, sign an oath saying you fully understand the consequences, and pay a large processing fee. Once you renounce it, you lose your passport, your right to vote, and your access to federal benefits. And if you ever want to visit the U.S. again, you must apply for a visa just like anyone from another country. Many people who renounce do it for personal, financial, or professional reasons, especially those who've permanently settled abroad. But the key detail is that once you give it up, you can't undo it. But the more unsettling part is what happens when someone doesn't want to give up their citizenship at all. This is where denaturalization comes in. This is when the government goes to court to reverse someone's naturalization because they believe it was obtained improperly. It's a legal process handled by the Department of Justice, and even though it isn't criminal, the consequences are just as serious. If a federal judge rules against you, your citizenship disappears instantly. The most common reason this happens is fraud or hiding important information during the naturalization process. It could involve lying about your identity, not disclosing past crimes, hiding your immigration history, or leaving out affiliations that raise red flags. And here's the part people rarely know. There is no time limit. You could have been a citizen for 5 years, 20 years, or even 40 years, and if the government uncovers something that should have disqualified you, they can still take action. There have been plenty of documented cases showing this. People who came to the U.S. from war-torn regions in the 90s have lost their citizenship decades later, when investigators uncovered evidence of involvement in violence that they hid on their applications. There was even a case of a man who lived quietly in the U.S. for over half a century, but once authorities learned he had concealed his past involvement with a regime responsible for atrocities, his citizenship was revoked, and he was removed from the country. These situations show that time alone doesn't protect someone if the government believes the original application wasn't truthful. It isn't only the past that matters. Sometimes actions taken after becoming a citizen can also raise concerns, especially within the first few years of naturalization. Joining certain groups, serving in a foreign military that conflicts with U.S. interests, or taking a high-ranking position in a foreign government without permission can all be considered violations if they suggest divided or exclusive loyalty. Even if someone never committed violence, public involvement with extremist political groups or hostile governments can lead to legal trouble if the government argues that the person never intended to be fully loyal to the United States. There's also confusion around dual citizenship. Many Americans and immigrants believe holding another citizenship automatically puts them at risk, but that isn't true. Dual citizenship is allowed in most cases, and millions of people have it. What matters is intent. If you take another citizenship for normal reasons like ancestry, marriage, or residency, that's usually fine. But taking an oath in another country that specifically rejects allegiance to the U.S., or working in a position that requires exclusive loyalty to another nation, can create problems if it contradicts the promises made during naturalization. Behind all of this, there are government teams whose entire job is to review old cases and open new ones. The Department of Justice works with Homeland Security and immigration authorities, and they use advanced technology, decades of records, and information shared internationally. So even someone who became a citizen in the 80s or 90s could get reviewed today if new evidence appears or conflicting information surfaces. When they believe they have enough proof, they file a lawsuit. It's not an arrest, but it is a serious court action. The person can defend themselves, hire a lawyer, and present evidence, but if the court rules against them, the outcome is final. The passport is cancelled, the voting rights vanish, and the person becomes deportable under federal law. Natural-born citizens are almost fully protected from this, except in extremely unusual situations, where their original birth identity was fraudulent. These situations are rare, but they do happen in cases involving forged documents, false parentage, or identity misuse. In those situations, the government argues that the person was never actually a citizen to begin with. But outside of those scenarios, being born in America gives you strong constitutional protection. When you look at every case where someone actually loses U.S. citizenship, the same themes show up again and again: intent, honesty, and transparency. The government focuses on whether someone meant to deceive the system or whether they took actions that directly conflicted with the responsibilities of citizenship. You can't lose it for having unpopular opinions or changing your political beliefs, but if the government can prove dishonesty or actions that violate the legal terms of naturalization, they can act even decades later. The main lesson here is that U.S. citizenship is extremely valuable, but it's also a serious legal status with responsibilities. For naturalized citizens especially, knowing the rules and being honest from the very beginning is essential. This isn't meant to scare anyone. It's meant to shine a light on something most people never think about. Citizenship is powerful, but like anything powerful, it requires awareness. Because in some cases, what a person doesn't know really can cost them.